All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us for the Sustainability and Study Away panel at the 7 College Virtual Study Away Fair. My name is Chelsea Colleton and I am the Assistant Director of Global Education at Amherst College. I also have Carrie Stamp, who's the Director of Study Away at Vassar College. And I'd like to give a shout out to Mount Holyoke College, who's helping us with all the tech services and setting up our panels for today. So our session today has a couple of outcomes of what we want you to get out of it, mostly focusing on the relationship between environmental sustainability and the field of study abroad, and how to reduce your footprint while studying abroad, no matter what program you're pursuing. We also have some panelists from some of our study abroad providers that can give you examples of programs that incorporate the concepts and the study of sustainability into their curriculum. So our speakers today, we have Craig McDonald from SIT Study Abroad and Devin Foxall from the School for Field Studies. And our student panelist is Leanna Tang from Vassar College, who studied abroad with SIT on their IHP Climate Change program. So first, Devin, do you want to talk a little bit about the School for Field Studies and the programs that you guys offer?
Sure. Thank you for having us here. So my name is Devin Foxall. I work for the School for Field Studies, where I help connect prospective students with SFS programs. Quick about me, I traveled off and on for a few years between undergraduate and graduate school, stepping foot in about 40 countries, often with a curiosity about how the changing environment was impacting local societies. And that's what brought me to SFS. So the School for Field Studies is a study abroad organization focused on environmental field programs. We're in 10 of the world's most biodiverse and iconic ecosystems, as you can see here. And our students basically take what they've learned in the classroom of their home colleges and universities, and they bring it out into the field, whether it's studying wildlife in the Serengeti or mountain ecology in Bhutan of the Himalayas. And we also stress community-driven research. So we work with local stakeholders to identify their most pressing environmental issues, sometimes for a couple of years before we even launch a program. And then we build a research framework from that for our students to pursue. In the end, our students present their research back to the community so that with the end goal of having a more sustainable future in these 10 locations.
Awesome, thank you. And Craig, do you want to talk a little bit about SIT Study Abroad?
Yeah, so Devin really made it easy for me because SIT and SFS are quite similar. So basically what he said. And I think we're also sort of similar people. So like, I'm Craig McDonald. I also have set foot in about 40 countries with similar curiosities. SIT is the School for International Trainings. So we are a college in Vermont, an accredited college that offers these programs all around the world at the undergraduate level for study abroad. And so in the case of SIT, there's a wide range of different academic disciplines that programs fall into. So one of the categories that we work with is on climate and environment. But then there's a variety of other programs as well that follow a similar model in fields like resilience and identity, public health, social change, and things of that nature, where the general structure is similar to what Devin described in the sense that it is field-based experiential study abroad. And so students are taking college courses that are transferring back towards their programs of study, but you're not at a university campus abroad. So it's not like a university exchange type of thing. It's field-based learning where there's a learning center that we run, where there will be days where you're in a classroom taking notes and watching a lecture, but more often than not, it's a lot of out of the classroom experiences relating to a particular theme in one of those categories that I was mentioning. And then students for the final month of the semester have an experiential capstone project that they're devoted to, where it's either some sort of research project that a student is working on or some sort of field-based internship relevant to their program theme. And then they're devoted to that for the final month or so of the semester.
Perfect, thank you. And Leanna, would you be able to tell us a little bit about who you are as a student, your major, how you picked your study abroad program, and maybe a couple of your favorite experiences you got to have?
Yeah, so I'm Leanna. I'm a senior environmental studies major at Vassar College, minoring in economics. I went on the IHP climate change program, which IHP is like a subset of the SIT program, where you travel across 4 different countries. So you start off in the U.S. and then you basically spend a month in 3 different other countries in, I think, typically different continents. So for me, they were Vietnam, Morocco, and Peru. And the theme of my study abroad was the politics of food, water, and energy. I think it's now been renamed to land, water, and energy justice. But all of the same themes were encapsulated. So talking a lot about like environmental justice and environmental injustice, what that looks like in countries around the world. And basically the culmination of the program is you do like a comparative research project. So you have to look at whatever topic you want to look at. Mine was smallholder agriculture and resistance against industrialization in the countries that we visited, and to kind of like give like a global analysis of the issues that you want to look at. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have some questions for each of you to answer. And I guess for the first one, whoever wants to jump in first, it's not a complicated question at all. How would you describe the relationship between international education and sustainability? And for our folks from the program providers, that can be in a professional or a personal capacity from your own experiences, and then Leanna from your experience as well.
Sure, I can take that on. So I think the relationship between international education and sustainability is much like the relationship between international education and almost any pressing issue. And that's first, by visiting a new place, you learn how different societies and different cultures value things in different ways, whether it's family or food, creativity, or how they make sure that the environment is sustained for future generations. And also many countries and cultures are older than America. And so I think by traveling abroad, seeing places that have a longer history, you can sometimes see the past mistakes of different countries, but also how they've managed to adapt to changing environments. And then the third part would be that traveling sort of allows you to see not just the differences, but how universal the human experience can be. So many of the most challenging environmental issues of our time are not going to be ones that just impact the United States or just impact New England. They're not limited to one country. They're going to be global. They cross borders, they cross oceans. And so learning on a person-to-person level that what you do impacts someone halfway across the globe, I think is sort of one of the main benefits of traveling or international education right now.
Thank you. Craig or Leanna, whoever wants to jump in next.
I mean, I can talk a bit. I think, like, for me, one of the bigger takeaways from my experience was when we talk about sustainability, I think sustainability really has to be like the rising tide that lifts all boats, right? Like, if we're leaving people behind when we try to implement sustainable practices, then they're not actually sustainable. In some way, they're not adhering to the principles that we're trying to accomplish. And so in America, we're very lucky that, like, you know, all things considered, we're a relatively well-off country. We're not going to experience, in many ways, like a lot of the effects of climate change, for example, that like people around the world are already experiencing. And so sometimes it can be hard for us to see like the impacts that are already happening on people around the world, because we can be somewhat isolated from it. And I think going on an international experience, studying abroad, it can really bring you closer to those issues and kind of give you a sense of like what it means to really like have sustainability be like a core practice in your life.
Yeah, and I would agree. Obviously, seeing the ways that, you know, all sorts of different international issues affect some of the most vulnerable people in the world is obviously so important to understanding those issues. Because as Leanna said, we're in the United States largely isolated from all of these things. You know, when bad things happen in the world, they usually don't happen to us. But that doesn't mean that, you know, they're not happening just because they're not happening here. And so obviously going overseas educates folks, you know, to make them better informed about things that they can be doing in their own lives, and, you know, things that we can be doing in our own country to have a positive impact on those types of issues. Because even though, again, like things like climate change is not necessarily directly affecting the daily lives of Americans, things, you know, decisions that our government makes and decisions that we make here in this country can impact folks around the world. And so obviously that's something that students learn when they're engaging in international education in some form or another. You learn about the impact that we really have on the world in that sense and what we can do to make sure that impact is positive.
Absolutely. And to relate off of that too, I'd like to take a moment to make sure everyone makes sure that they're registered to vote this November. Yesterday was National Voter Registration Day. And I think, like all of the panelists mentioned, even if we don't see the effects of climate change within our country, we are impacting the rest of the world. The rest of the world is impacting us. So it's important to have your voice be heard. So next, how do you grapple, and I guess, do you grapple with the value of international education and the things that we mentioned before versus the importance of having a low carbon footprint? And with Leanna, I guess, did this impact your decision to study away at all? Is it something that you thought about beforehand and maybe came up with a plan before? Or Craig and Devin, when you're traveling, do you think about how to reduce your carbon footprint? I think students in general tend to want to be living more sustainable lives, and flying on a plane around the world doesn't exactly seem to align with that sometimes. So how do you get around that?
That's something that I increasingly thought about gradually over the last 10 years, right? It's not something I used to occur to me very much. But yes, of course, you know, like that's a major impact on our carbon footprint is air travel. And so, you know, obviously, on one hand, you know, you don't necessarily want to be jet setting around the world all the time because of what that can do. But what I really do believe that obviously if we are going somewhere with a purpose, then that can educate us about, you know, if you're learning something, if you're gaining great knowledge about sustainability from your travels, then that can inform other aspects of your life, and that can help you inform other people about these issues in a way that overall has a positive impact, you know, a net impact that is a good one. I think that, you know, one thing that we try to do in SIT, and this has been a part of a lot of the programs, is engaging in activities that are, you know, going to try to lessen the carbon footprint of our specific program. And so, for example, there's an SIT program on comparative ecology and conservation based in Ecuador. And the former academic director, she's now retired, always liked to pride herself on saying that, you know, she made this the first program that we had that was carbon neutral. Because of different carbon offset activities that the students engaged in, volunteering activities, donations to organizations that promoted carbon neutrality. She did this whole calculation. I remember going through spreadsheets with her about it, about, you know, the estimated carbon impact of every student could be offset by this variety of activities that the students engaged in and that the program engaged in throughout the semester, every semester. And so things like that, where, you know, yes, you are getting in an airplane, yes, you are traveling, yes, you are getting in a car or a bus when you're going to different types of you know, locations in the host country and whatnot. But at the end, there are things that there are experiences you can gain and knowledge that you can learn from that, which then again informs other aspects of your life, you know, afterwards. And so that's the way I do increasingly think about it, you know, in the sense that these international experiences can teach us things that we wouldn't have known otherwise. And so then hopefully again, then our net impact is a positive impact.
So that's very exciting that the program became carbon neutral.
And other ones have followed since then. So other SIT programs then have incorporated those same practices with that goal.
Excellent.
It's also true that there's definitely a huge carbon footprint by international travel, by getting on that plane. But by leaving the United States and really not doing many changes beyond that, you're usually going to lower your carbon footprint. So on many of the SFS programs, for instance, students are walking to class. That's just naturally part of the program, eating from local food, reducing resource consumption pretty much the entire time. And what we've even learned is just by unplugging from the internet, it doesn't seem like it would be a massive carbon contributor, but say just streaming music, streaming Netflix can actually every year adds hundreds of millions of tons of carbon to the atmosphere. So getting past that has really helped. We did ask a lot of our sending schools if they would think it would be a good idea if we made it mandatory that students would pay a $30, $35 carbon offset fee for their international travel. And many said no, because they thought it would impact low income students the most. They worried about that. And they really thought it should be an educational component to the program. So it's not just something that you could cleanse your conscience of by spending $30, but actually it would be better and more educational to really reconsider the impact that you're having on the environment.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes, kind of on a similar note, sorry, very quickly, but like on like the orientation day of my program, our program director, Nico, like kind of put up a chart to be like, hey, here's your carbon footprint, like this is what you're expending by going on the program, because IHP, like out of necessity, already has like a much larger carbon footprint than any of the other SIT programs since you're traveling so much. And what we really kind of had to grapple with was like, how do you extract like as much value out of your time abroad as possible, so that you can, you know, like the other panelists have been saying, like educationally try to offset the impact that you're making on the world. Like it's a cost-benefit analysis that kind of has to be run every time I think one of these programs takes a student off. Like, is it worth it to teach the student? Like, is the education that they're receiving like worth the carbon that's being put into the air? And like so far, it weighs in the benefit of the student because the program's still running. But I think it's really up to the individual student to try to make the most out of it. I really felt like if I wasn't like actively engaging in the program, like I was kind of, you know, making more of an impact on the world, like carbon wise, than I might have been if I was really like living in the program as much as possible.
Awesome, thank you. And for our next question, everyone kind of touched on this already a little bit, talking about programs becoming net neutral, programs enforcing the educational aspect of it, and the kind of unintentional ways that we offset our carbon footprint by unplugging and walking instead of using cars. Is there anything that you all wanted to add about how your organization addresses sustainability concerns, whether that's actual practices, education, getting ready for students in their pre-orientation, or Leanna, if you wanted to add anything about how you incorporated maybe some day-to-day practices in your lifestyle abroad? Or if you have any fun tips for students in general.
We sort of make it a very democratic process, so not just individual behaviors or decisions or changes. So during orientation or just after, our students will actually write their own, or actually write collectively, vote on and sign an environmental sustainability agreement. So through that democratic process, they're learning to compromise certain behaviors for the benefit of the entire community. And then throughout the semester, through the summer term, they abide by that sustainability contract. And it can be anything from like improving recycling. In Costa Rica, they were able to get the farm that's at the center, turned it into a Rainforest Alliance farm, utilizing composting, or really questioning a lot of the field excursions that they do. So the students have a lot of resources and a lot of power on the program, so sort of determine how the program itself can run sustainably. It's not just something that the provider, the organization requests from them.
Yeah, I think that's super important to make sure everyone's buying into the process, and it's not just you need to put this in the blue bin for recycling. It's kind of, why do you need to do that, and why is it important that you do that, and do you actually want to do that to create a sustainable environment?
Yeah, and I think that's obviously a really key part is understanding the why. And so that's something that I know we and that a lot of institutions nowadays are trying increasingly to incorporate. It's not just about checking a box and feeling good that you know recycled that bottle, but you know the understanding how this is going to impact this local community. And that's where I think, you know, again, like the novelty of being in a new country, of being in a new location, a new perspective on those issues really heightens our awareness of them. So, you know, you think about it differently. You think about it from the perspective of the culture and the country where you are. And then that again informs our decisions and, you know, reminds us of the importance of these things in a new way, which then hopefully keeps it at the forefront of our mind. So even on an individual level, we're making choices that are going to, you know, have a positive, sustainable impact going forward.
Absolutely. Leanna, did you want to share anything about your sustainable practices while you were abroad?
I mean, so sorry. I mean, there are always like the individual practices you can pick, right? So recycling, or I mean, we got reusable water bottles, so we weren't really drinking from water bottles at all. But like eating vegetarian, which you can choose to do while you're on the program. I think IHP in general, it can be pretty structured. So like sometimes you're not choosing where you eat, or you're not really choosing like what you're doing for the day. And in that way, like you can lose maybe a little bit of your autonomy and like what kind of sustainable practices you're doing. But at the same time, that's kind of like the trade-off for like really trying to engage deeply in like the deeper questions about like why we want sustainability and like what sustainability means to you. So I don't know that I have any tips for like what exactly you can do to like live sustainably. I think there's a lot of them out there. And like, you know, if you're here, you probably know a lot of them as well. And I don't really have anything new to add, but like, I think just like living on the program, like being on the program, it's really trying to teach you like to try to incorporate sustainability in like your way of thinking. And that's how the program really grapples with this issue.
Awesome, thank you. So next we have an open forum for anyone who's in the session right now and has some questions for our panelists. I can fill up the time by just continuing to talk if we don't have any questions, but we'd love to hear, maybe you have questions about Leanna's experience or programs in general that focus on sustainability. So feel free to pop those in the chat or use the little emoji button to wave your hand at us to get our attention. All right, Leanna, could you speak more to why you chose to participate in a program with a curricular focus on sustainability and why you felt it was important to learn about it in a global context rather than focusing on your home campus?
Yeah, so I guess like a little background about me, like to kind of like give this a little context. I grew up in China. I have a very American accent, so it doesn't sound like it, but I spent most of my life overseas. And I came back for college, didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I really only decided on environmental studies towards like kind of the tail end of my sophomore year. And then I went on the program the semester after. And so going into this program, I chose it because I really wanted to figure out like what I wanted to do with my interest in environmental studies. And for me, it was really important that I kind of learn about it in a global context because, you know, going to university in the US for a couple years, I was already a little frustrated with the focus on the United States in a lot of the curriculum that I was taking. And I was really interested in like globalization and like the interplay between countries and what that means for us, like for us here in the US, but also for us as just like an entire world, the society of it. And for me, they felt like very interconnected issues, like the issues of sustainability, the issues of climate change. So I didn't really want to only learn about it in a singular context. I really wanted to get like kind of a wider breadth of what what like sustainability looks like in many different places.
Yeah, and on the IHP program, you have a great opportunity to do that because it's the comparative between the 3 locations too. Awesome. So Devin and Craig, what should students do next if they are interested in learning more about SFS and SIT programs? Whoever wants to go first.
I defer to Craig.
Okay. I mean, yeah, so in both cases, obviously, I think it's, you know, a good idea. You can certainly reach out to us directly to ask any questions you may have. You know, our email addresses are available through this virtual fair event today. And of course, our program websites have information. So I think, you know, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and then simultaneously, you know, obviously have conversations with your study abroad advisors at your home campuses, specifically about, you know, what are the requirements for your institutions, you know, what forms do you need to get signed, what permissions do you need to get in order to ensure things like credit transfer. A lot of times, students prior to enrolling in a program, you do need to have like a syllabus for the courses that you're going to be going on, and we can all, of course, provide those to you. So, you know, obviously going over it with your advisor to determine exactly how is this going to be counted towards your program of study at your home campus. In most cases, you know, things may transfer as general elective credit, but if you wanted to count towards other requirements, you want to just have those discussions to iron out those details. And we're available as part of that process. So don't leave anything to chance. You know, please don't hesitate to contact us directly with specific questions that come up as far as how things will be counted, and, you know, what types of possibilities could you be pursuing for research abroad? What types of organizations might you be able to work with? You know, what other, you know, health and safety issues, you know, especially in light of everything going on, what other issues, you know, what questions might you have about those matters? Because that's what we're available for, is to answer those questions.
That's all very good. And I always say, talk to alumni, talk to as many alumni as you can, and even ask them, what were the challenges of the program? What did they wish they knew before going into it? Both SIT and SFS are sort of non-traditional providers. And what we found is that if the student hears all these challenges, but they actually think that those are the highlights of the program, then they're usually a very good fit for one of these programs. They are programs where you're given a lot of independence, you get your hands dirty quite a bit, you're in sometimes rural or remote locations. It can be a little tougher, a little more academically rigorous at times, but just talking to as many people as you can about the program, I think is a benefit. So you should have some surprises going in, but not completely surprised.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about knowing kind of we all see the highlight reel of study abroad, but sometimes seeing the challenges ahead of time too, or kind of what challenges there might be, is a good indication if it's a good fit for you program wise also. Another question we have is, are there different programs with different themes? So programs focused on ecology or anthropology, things like that.
So I think for SFS, it's going to be a little more narrow. So primarily we see biology, environmental studies, environmental science students. That's going to be about 75% of our majors. And then the other quarter will come from the full spectrum of academia. Because the programs are so focused. So if you go to Turks and Caicos, you are studying marine bio, scuba diving, getting out into the Atlantic pretty much every day. So if it's like a casual interest, that's going to be kind of a tough semester for you. But if you're interested in that, then it might be the perfect semester for you. Whereas SIT, I'll let Craig say it, but they have all these environmental programs, I think the same number as we do, but many more different options as well.
Yeah. So Devin and I used to work together at SIT too, so he knows. But yeah, exactly that. So we do have our subset of climate and environment programs that are focused on that particular theme, but then there will be a wide range of students from all sorts of different majors. So in our case, around 1/5 to 1/4 of the students come from some sort of biology or environmental related background, academic background, but then there's other programs in all sorts of other different fields as well. So you know, it just kind of depends on what makes the most sense for the students' interest. And so I do, always advise that students take a look at the different categories that the programs are in on the website. And the titles give you an idea of what a program is about, but then of course you can drill down into it and kind of see more details about specifically what does it entail. And then again, as Devin said, certain programs, if it's just a sort of light interest that you have in that field, then maybe think about it and evaluate whether or not it's the right fit for you. But if it's a topic that you're really devoted to and really passionate to, it might be the best semester because you're really immersed in that thematic concentration.
And going off of that, and I have a feeling it might be different for different locations, but are there any prereqs for the programs? Or to flip it around, what prereqs should students be looking for or making sure they have while they're looking at your programs?
So a lot of the environmental studies ones will obviously have some sort of prerequisite in that field. Usually the idea behind the prerequisites is generally going to be that students have some sort of demonstrated interest in the topic, because again, you don't want to realize that you hate something while you're in the middle of a study abroad program around the world. So generally speaking, when you see like some sort of content related prerequisite with our programs, it's going to be, one course minimum, potentially more courses depending on the program site. There are certain programs that have language prerequisites, most of them don't. But ultimately every individual program has its own individual prerequisites and some don't have any. But generally speaking, it's normal for there to be some sort of recommended prerequisite of at least one course in some sort of theme relevant to that program. And that way you going into the program have some sort of foundational understanding in what you're getting yourself into.
And similar for SFAS, for a semester program, you have to have one semester of biology, environmental science studies or something of that nature. There's no language prereqs for our programs. We like to say that the language of SFAS is science. And it's not official, but what we see from the students who do best is a natural curiosity and the ability to live in a very communal setting. So you're going to be at a center with 24 other students from colleges and universities across the country. So, the students who do the best are those who are able to sort of really embrace that challenge.
Absolutely. And Devin, this question is specific for you. Some of the programs are a little bit more coastal or island based for SFS. Are there any physical requirements like needing it to be able to swim or things like that?
Yep, we do ask for pretty much every program that students be in reasonable physical shape. They can be quite physically intensive. There might be multi-day hikes in 90-degree humid weather on a lot of programs. And then for Panama and for Turks and Caicos, you do need to pass a swimming test upon arrival. It's not a very difficult swimming test, I would say, but you need to have a real comfort of being in the water without being able to see the shore, which some students can have, even though they're very good swimmers, they've been practicing a lot. That experience of being out in the ocean can be a little tricky for some folks. So they know that going in, but yes, they do have to be in pretty good physical condition.
So I think we're getting close to the end here. I don't see any other questions. So I guess my last question would be, what is the best first step that you can recommend for students to take in the next couple of weeks while they're starting to maybe look at and choose their sustainable program? What's kind of an action item for students to do next?
I always tell folks, it's never too early to start planning. So even if you're in your first year at university, you're not going to be going abroad right away. We're several semesters away from when you might actually be going. Now's the time, before the month ends, have a look, obviously, and this event going on today is a great opportunity to do that. Take a look at what's available. Take a look and get some ideas about places you think you might want to go. When you have your meeting with your advisor to talk about courses for next semester, make sure that you mention to them, right away, I'm planning to study abroad at some point, so that they have that on their radar and so that you have that on your radar as well. And then, definitely before the semester has ended, if you have, any type of activity with your study abroad office at your individual campus, whether that be some sort of, study abroad introductory info session or some sort of open advising hours or anything to that effect, any option to talk to someone or receive information from your study abroad office about the opportunities at your campus. Definitely take advantage of that, and really do both. Don't just rely on your advisor, because the study abroad office at your campus is going to have the most comprehensive information about education abroad experiences. Your advisor in your department may know some of those things, but may not know all of those things. And so always do both, right? Go to your advisor in your department, but also your study abroad office is going to have the most comprehensive information about these international experiences and when's the best time to do them for your major. And they'll be able to just provide you with all that different advice. So I would say, again, before this semester is done, make sure you've done something with both those entities. So that way, you kind of can get the ball rolling, and then, have something in the works for a future semester down the road. Again, even if it's going to be, a ways away from now, because it's never too early to start planning.
Yep, I concur with Craig. Start early. Start looking during your first year. Start really planning second year. Work with your study abroad office at each location, because there's going to be, it's one of those tricky things that you're likely doing once. So it's not something that you can sort of repeat over and over again and learn from your mistakes in the past. So learn from those who have gone through the process and learn from those who are trying to help you through the process as well.
Excellent. Yeah, I tend to call this part the fun research phase, where you get to look at all the photos, try to picture yourself in the location, talking to students who have been and hearing about their experiences before you have to commit to any of the harder steps of the process. So thank you all for being here. Are there any kind of final thoughts that you want to share? Any general study abroad advice, Leanna, that you want to share with students, or things you wish you had done or not done?
I guess I just want to bring back that you definitely want to talk to alumni, not to overly promote SIT, but on the SIT website, there's a page where you can find all the alumni who have been and who have volunteered to be alumni mentor. I'm there, and you can talk to them sometimes about very specific things, if you want to know what it's like to be Black in Vietnam, I have a friend who was on my program who had that experience, or if you want to know what it's like being queer abroad, or being gender nonconforming, these are all things that you can talk to people about. And these are very specific identity experiences that only alumni and students who have gone on these trips can truly speak to. No offense to the program leaders, but so that's valuable information to have, if you're worried about something along those lines. How difficult is it to eat vegetarian on this trip? If it's very important to you that you be vegetarian, that's all information that you can find, and that's really important for helping you decide where you want to go exactly and what program's the best fit for you.
And I would just end by saying too that, I don't know anyone who regrets studying abroad. I know a lot of people who regret not doing it. And as Devin said, this is likely something you're only going to have the chance to do once. And so, just start thinking about it now, start exploring all the options now. And definitely, these suggestions too about speaking with alumni, speaking with advisors, all those types of things, just make it a part of your plan for college. Because what inevitably happens is people get to their junior year and it's, the October of their junior year, and then they think, oh, wait a second, I want to do this now. When can I do this? And in some cases, it might be excessively complicated to do it at that point if you're just too far along in your college career at that point in time. So really, just the earlier the better, and make it happen, because regardless of your major, regardless of your academic background, you absolutely can find something that's going to fit for you, whether it be a program that we've talked about today or something with another organization or another institution. There's such a wide variety out there, and it absolutely enhances the value of the college degree that you're working on right now. Because when 40 resumes come across someone's desk for that great job someday, yours is going to be the one that has this international experience that you're going to be referencing. And alumni will tell you too that in job interviews, they're always talking about their study abroad experiences. It's really just a very valuable resume builder and life experience opportunity that really enhances your future career. And so obviously make a point to take advantage of that as part of your college experience.
Absolutely. Anything else anyone wants to add? Awesome. Well, thank you again to all of our panelists. The exhibitor pages for SIT and SFS will be live and available throughout the week, along with the rest of our exhibitors. And Carrie did pop the links for both websites in the chat. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out to your homeschool study abroad office or any of the providers. And thank you again for everyone for joining us. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.